Welcome to the narrated novel, where books don't just sit on shelves, they come alive through stories and lessons. Today, we're not just summarizing a book, we're stepping into a journey. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad Introduction, The Tale of Two Fathers. This is the story of a boy who grew up with two dads. One was highly educated, intelligent, and respected, a school teacher with advanced degrees. Robert called him his poor dad. The other had very little formal education, never finished the 8th grade, yet became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. Robert called him his rich dad. Both men were successful in their own way, but when it came to money, their philosophies were worlds apart. Poor Dad believed in studying hard, getting good grades, and finding a secure job. Rich Dad believed in learning how money works, building assets, and letting money work for you. As Robert grew up, he had to decide, which father's advice would he follow? This book is the story of that decision and the lessons he learned that changed his life forever. Chapter 1. The Rich Don't Work for Money. The story begins in Hawaii, 1956. Robert was only 9 years old when he felt poor for the first time. One summer afternoon, his friends were planning a trip to the beach house of a wealthy classmate. They had shiny bicycles, baseball gloves, and even snacks from fancy stores. Robert and his best friend Mike, however, had none of these things. "Sorry, you can't come," the rich kids told them. "You're poor." Those words stung like a slap. That night, Robert asked his father, the man he admired and respected, "Dad, how do I get rich?" His poor dad smiled and gave the standard answer. "Study hard, get good grades, and you'll find a safe, secure job." But Robert wasn't satisfied. He had seen too many people with good jobs still struggling with money. So he turned to Mike's father, his future rich dad. One morning, Robert and Mike knocked on his office door. "Can you teach us how to be rich?" they asked shyly. Rich Dad looked at them for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but I won't teach you in the classroom way. If you want to learn, you'll work for me." The boys were thrilled. "How much will you pay us?" Robert asked. Rich Dad replied, 10 cents an hour. Their faces fell. 10 cents was almost nothing, even in the 1950s, but they agreed. For 3 weeks, every Saturday morning, Robert worked in one of Rich Dad's small convenience stores. He stocked shelves, dusted cans, and swept the floors. At the end of the day, he was handed a tiny handful of coins. At first, Robert kept quiet, but by the 3rd week, frustration boiled over. "This isn't fair," he cried to his poor dad. "I work hard, but I get almost nothing. He's not teaching me anything." His poor dad encouraged him to demand more pay or quit. But when Robert confronted Rich Dad, ready to explode, something unexpected happened. Rich Dad leaned back in his chair, looked Robert in the eye, and said, "Good. In less than a month, you sound just like most of my employees. Angry, blaming their boss, feeling underpaid. That's the lesson." Robert blinked in confusion. "What lesson?" Rich Dad smiled. "Life doesn't teach you with words. It pushes you around. Some people let life push them and give up. Some get angry and push back at their boss or job. But few people learn from it. If you blame me, you'll learn nothing. If you look inside yourself, you'll grow wiser." Then Rich Dad explained the real trap of money. Most people spend their lives driven by fear and desire. Fear of not having enough pushes them to work hard, chasing paychecks. Then comes desire. They want more comfort, more luxury, more security. So they spend their money on things that make them feel rich. Houses, cars, vacations. But this only traps them in the cycle Rich Dad called the rat race. Work, earn, spend. Work, earn, spend. For 40 years, Rich Dad leaned forward and said the words that would shape Robert's life forever. "The poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them." Robert sat silently, his young mind racing. For the first time, he realized the problem wasn't low pay. It was how people thought about money. That day, lesson 1 became clear. Don't spend your life chasing paychecks. Learn how money works. Make it your servant, not your master. Don't let fear and desire trap you. Don't wait for a raise, a promotion, or a lucky break. Instead, start building the mindset of the rich. Ask yourself, am I working for money, or am I learning to make money work for me? That's the difference between being trapped in the rat race and breaking free. Chapter 2. Why teach financial literacy? After the first lesson. Robert was curious. If the rich don't work for money, then what exactly do they do differently? One afternoon, Rich Dad sat Robert and Mike at his dining table. He placed a blank sheet of paper in front of them. Then, with his pen, he drew two simple columns. On the left, he wrote assets. On the right, he wrote liabilities. He looked at the boys and said, "This, my sons, is the single most important lesson in financial literacy. Master this, and you will master wealth. Confuse this, and you will be trapped forever." The illusion of assets. Rich Dad explained, most people think they're building wealth, but they're actually digging a deeper hole. He gave an example. Take your father, Robert. He says his house is his greatest investment. But let me ask you, does his house put money in his pocket every month? Or does it take money out? Robert thought for a moment. Well, he pays for the mortgage, the taxes, the repairs. So it takes money out. Exactly, Rich Dad said, tapping the paper. A house is not an asset. It is a liability. It drains money from you every single month. Most people confuse liabilities for assets. That's why they never become wealthy. Robert was shocked. But Dad always says our house is an investment. Rich Dad chuckled. That's what most of the middle class believes. They work hard, save up, buy a house, then spend the rest of their lives paying for it. They think they're getting richer, but in truth, they're stuck in debt. Everyday traps, he gave more examples. A new car, it loses value the second you drive it off the lot, plus gas, insurance, and repairs. Liability, expensive vacations on credit cards. You come back with memories, but also with debt. Liability, fancy clothes to look rich, they don't pay you back. Liability. Then Rich Dad leaned forward. The poor and middle class spend their lives collecting liabilities. The rich spend their lives collecting assets. What counts as an asset? Robert asked. So what's a real asset? Rich Dad smiled. Good question. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket, even when you're not working. He listed examples. Real estate that pays you rent. Stocks or bonds that give dividends or interest. Businesses you own that make money whether you're there or not. Royalties from books, music, or inventions. These are assets. They feed you even while you sleep. The 3 cash flow patterns. Then Rich Dad drew 3 diagrams. 1. Poor people. Money comes in, money goes out. Nothing left. 2. Middle class. They earn more, but their expenses grow with their income. Bigger house, nicer car, fancier lifestyle. They look rich, but they're secretly broke. 3. Rich people. They funnel their income into assets. Those assets generate more income, which they use to be. Their wealth grows like a snowball rolling downhill. This, Rich Dad said, pointing to the 3rd diagram, is why some people can earn $100,000 a year and still be broke, while others earn $40,000 and become wealthy. It's not about what you earn, it's about what you keep. Why schools don't teach this, Robert frowned. But why don't schools teach us this? Isn't money important? Rich Dad laughed. Schools don't teach money because they're designed to produce employees, not entrepreneurs. They want you to become a worker who earns a paycheck and pays taxes. That's why you can have doctors, bankers, even professors who are broke. They learned how to earn money, but never how to manage it. He looked serious. That's why financial literacy is so important. Without it, no matter how much you make, you'll always struggle. The wake-up call. That day, Robert realized that most people aren't poor because they don't earn enough. They're poor because they don't know how to handle money. They think buying a bigger house or a fancier car makes them rich, but all it does is trap them in debt. Meanwhile, the rich quietly build assets. They don't always look flashy. They may not drive the newest car or live in the biggest house, but their assets are working for them. Day and night. Financial literacy is the foundation of freedom. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how much you keep. It's not about looking rich. It's about being rich in assets. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter with money. So ask yourself today, are you buying assets or are you stuck buying liabilities? Rich Dad's final words on that lesson were simple but powerful. The rich aren't rich because of their salaries. They're rich because of their financial intelligence. Chapter 3, Mind Your Own Business. By now, Robert had learned 2 powerful lessons. 1, the rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. 2, financial literacy is the foundation of wealth, knowing the difference between assets and liabilities. Now, Rich Dad introduced a 3rd lesson, one that completely changed Robert's perspective. Mind your own business, the trap of working for others. Robert's poor dad was a brilliant man. He had advanced degrees, a government job, and a secure paycheck. But Rich Dad pointed out the problem. Your father works hard, Rich Dad said, but he's working for someone else's dream. His paycheck comes from the government. His taxes enrich the government. His mortgage payments enrich the bank. His hours of labor enrich the system. But what is he building for himself? That struck Robert deeply. Rich Dad explained, this is what most people do. They spend their lives working for somebody else's business, for somebody else's wealth. They think if they just work harder, they'll be secure. But they're building empires for others, not themselves. Your job versus your business. One afternoon, Rich Dad asked Robert and Mike, what's the difference between your profession and your business? The boys shrugged. Rich Dad smiled. Your profession is what you do to earn money. Your business is what you build to grow wealth. He gave examples. A doctor's profession is medicine, but his business could be investing in medical centers or real estate. A lawyer's profession is law, but his business could be writing legal books that generate royalties. An engineer's profession is engineering, but his business could be owning patents or investing in startups. Don't confuse your profession with your business, Rich Dad warned. Your profession pays the bills. Your business builds your we. Building the asset column, Rich Dad showed them how he applied this lesson in his own life. While others celebrated promotions and pay raises, Rich Dad quietly bought more real estate, opened more businesses, and invested in opportunities. Even when one venture failed, his other assets kept producing income. Your real business is your asset column, he explained. Each asset you own is like planting a money tree. At first, it's small, but if you care for it, it grows and feeds you for a lifetime. Robert and Mike began to see the difference. Their poor dad was focused on job security. Their rich dad was focused on asset security. A story of 2 paths. To make the lesson stick, Rich Dad painted a picture. Imagine 2 men, he said. Both work hard. Both earn good salaries. One spends his life paying bills, buying a bigger house, upgrading his car, taking on more debt. He looks rich, but every month he's broke. The other lives simply at first, but with each paycheck, he buys an asset, a small rental property, a few shares of stock, a small side business. At first, no one notices, but over the years, his assets grow. Eventually, he no longer needs a paycheck. His assets pay for his lifestyle. Then Rich Dad leaned in. Which man do you want to be? Robert and Mike didn't hesitate. The second one. The hidden cost of neglecting. This Rich Dad warned them, if you don't mind your own business, you'll spend your life minding someone else's. You'll enrich your boss, your bank, your government, but you'll stay struggling. He said it plainly. The moment you work only for a paycheck, you become someone else's servant. The moment you build assets, you become your own master. Rich Dad didn't tell Robert to quit school or quit his job. He told him, have your profession, work hard, but never forget to also mind your own business. Your job is not your business. Period. Your business is your asset column. So what does that mean for us today? If you're an employee, start setting aside money to buy assets. If you're a professional, think about how your skills can create something that pays you over and over. If you have debt, start planning how to replace liabilities with assets. Always remember, don't just work for money. Build something that's yours. Ask yourself, am I only working for my boss's dream, or am I also building my own? Because the rich mind their own business. The poor and middle class mind everyone else's. Chapter 4. the history of taxes, and the power of corporations. By now, Robert had learned that wealth came from building assets, not chasing paychecks. But in the real world, there was another powerful force that kept the poor and middle class stuck while the rich grew richer. That force was taxes. The origins of taxation. Rich Dad sat Robert and Mike down and asked, "Do you know why income?" They shook their heads. Originally, Rich Dad explained, income tax was sold to the public as a way to punish the rich and help the poor. Politicians told people, "We'll tax the wealthy and use that money for everyone's benefit." The poor and middle class cheered. Finally, they thought, justice was being served. But here's the irony. Over time, the rich found ways to avoid paying taxes, while the poor and middle class ended up carrying most of the burden. How did that happen? Robert asked. Rich Dad smiled. Because the rich don't just earn money, they understand the rules of money. And one of the most powerful tools they use is the corporation. The power of corporations. Rich Dad drew a simple diagram. The poor and middle class earn money, get taxed first, then live on what's left. The rich earn money through corporations. They spend first on their business expenses, then get taxed on what's left. Look at the difference, Rich Dad said. If you earn $1,000 as an employee, taxes take a big bite before you even see your paycheck. But if you earn $1,000 through a corporation, you can first deduct your expenses: travel, cars, meals, business costs. You're taxed only on what remains. That's the advantage of minding your own business. Robert's eyes widened. So the rich legally pay less in taxes? Exactly, Rich Dad replied. The rich aren't cheating. They're simply playing by the rules of the rich. They understand the tax system, and they use it to their advantage. What schools don't teach. Rich Dad shook his head. Schools teach you to work for money, but they don't teach you how money actually works. They don't teach you about taxes, corporations, or the law. So most people enter the workforce blind, and by the time they learn, it's too late. He leaned in and said, that's why the rich get richer. They use corporations as shields to protect their wealth. Meanwhile, the poor and middle class just hand their earnings over to the government before they even touch them. A real-world example. Rich Dad gave the boys a real example from his own businesses. When I buy a car through my company, it's a business expense. It reduces my taxable income. But when your father buys a car, he pays for it after taxes, with the money that's left over from his paycheck. That's why your father always struggles, even though he earns well. Robert finally understood. His poor dad worked hard, paid his taxes, then tried to survive. His rich dad built corporations, invested through them, and let the law work for him instead of against him. The hidden lesson. Rich Dad explained it simply. The rich don't avoid taxes by breaking the law. They avoid taxes by understanding the law. That was the difference. Employees worked for money. The rich made money work for them and used corporations to protect and grow it. A lesson of this chapter is clear. If you only work for money, taxes will always eat away at your earnings. If you learn to think like the rich, using businesses, investments, and the law, you can protect and multiply your wealth. The poor and middle class earn, get taxed, and then try to live. The rich earn, invest, and spend, then get taxed on what's left. Rich Dad's final words from that lesson were unforgettable. The rich play the money game to win, and until you learn the rules, you'll always be playing for someone else's victory. Chapter 5. The Rich Invent Money. Robert was beginning to see that the rich didn't just have more money, they thought differently. But one day he asked Rich Dad, what if someone doesn't have money to start with? What if they're poor? How can they ever get ahead? Rich Dad smiled. That's the beauty of it, son. The rich don't rely on money. They rely on financial intelligence. When you have financial intelligence, you don't need money to make money. You can invent money, seeing what others don't. Rich Dad explained that opportunities are everywhere, but most people can't see them because they're blinded by fear or ignorance. An opportunity comes by, he said, and the poor say, I can't afford it. The middle class say, it's too risky, but the rich say, how can I make it happen? That shift in mindset makes all the difference. Robert began to notice it too. When markets crashed, most people panicked. But Rich Dad smiled because he saw bargains everywhere. While others were running away in fear, he was buying assets at a discount. Risk versus intelligence. Rich Dad said, "It's not that the rich love risk, it's that they know how to manage it." To the uneducated, investing looks like gambling. To the financially intelligent, investing is about strategy and knowledge. He compared it to driving a car. To someone who doesn't know how to drive, a car looks dangerous. But with training, it becomes second nature. Money works the same way. How the Rich Invent Money. Rich Dad explained that there are three main ways the rich invent money. 1. Spotting opportunities others miss. Buying undervalued real estate when others are afraid. Investing in businesses before they become big. Finding ways to solve problems people will pay for. 2. Creating assets from nothing. Writing a book, creating software, or building a business. Once created, these assets generate income again and again. 3. Using knowledge, not cash. Leveraging other people's money, skills, or time. Partnerships, loans, and smart deals allow the rich to create value without needing huge personal capital. Robert realized something powerful. The rich didn't wait for money to fall into their lap. They created it through ideas, creativity, and courage. The importance of financial IQ. Rich Dad often said, "Money without intelligence is money soon gone." But with financial intelligence, even if you lose everything, you can rebuild it again. He explained the 4 parts of financial intelligence. 1. Accounting, understanding numbers. 2. Investing, turning money into more money. 3. Markets, knowing supply and demand. 4. Law, using corporations and tax advantages legally. Master these, Rich Dad said, and you can invent money out of thin air. The lesson in action. Robert remembered a time when a small piece of land came up for sale. Most people ignored it. It looked worthless, but Rich Dad saw potential. He bought it cheap, then later sold it for a massive profit when development moved into the area. Robert was amazed. "How did you know?" Rich Dad grinned. "I didn't know. I studied. I watched trends. I took a calculated risk." That's financial intelligence in action. The poor wait for money. The middle class work hard for money. The rich invent money through ideas, opportunities, and intelligence. Wealth doesn't start with cash. It starts with courage and creativity. So ask yourself, are you waiting for the perfect paycheck? Or are you training your mind to see opportunities others miss? Rich Dad's words rang in Robert's ears. Money is created with ideas, not with dollars. Opportunities are everywhere. You just need to train your eyes to see them. Chapter 6, Work to Learn. Don't work for money. By this point, Robert understood that the rich don't chase paychecks. They build assets, use corporations, and invent money. But there was still one more crucial lesson Rich Dad wanted him to understand. Don't just work for money. Work to learn. The poor dad's advice. Robert's poor dad had always told him, go to school, get good grades, and find a safe, secure job. Specialize in one skill, and you'll always be in demand. It sounded logical. That's what society teaches, but Rich Dad disagreed. Specialization may get you a job, he said, but it won't make you wealthy. The rich don't chase paychecks. They chase knowledge and skills that make them financially free. The power of learning skills. Rich Dad told Robert and Mike, if you want to grow rich, don't ask, how much will I earn? Ask instead, what will I learn? He explained that the most valuable skills weren't technical ones like engineering or law, but business skills. Sales and marketing, because if you can't sell, you can't survive. Communication and writing, because ideas only matter if you can explain them clearly. Accounting and investing, because you need to understand money and how to multiply it. Leadership and people management, because no great business is built alone. Robert realized that Rich Dad wasn't just building businesses, he was building himself. Robert's own journey. Robert shared how this lesson shaped his own life. After college, he didn't chase the highest paying job. Instead, he worked at Xerox in sales, even though he didn't like selling. Why? because he knew sales was a skill that would serve him for life. At first, he was terrified of rejection. He stumbled, got nervous, and often failed to close deals. But over time, he grew confident. That skill later helped him sell his books, his investments, and his ideas to the world. If he had followed his poor dad's advice, he might have stayed in a government job, safe but stuck. Instead, by following Rich Dad's wisdom, he built a career that allowed him to grow wealthy and free. The real secret of the rich, Rich Dad explained. The difference between the rich and the poor isn't education, it's adaptability. The rich can step into new industries, learn new skills, and thrive. The poor stay stuck because they refuse to learn what makes them uncomfortable. He gave an example. A doctor might make $200,000 a year, but if he only knows medicine, he'll struggle outside his field. A rich entrepreneur might know sales, investing, leadership, and marketing. He can create opportunities anywhere. That flexibility, Rich Dad said, is true security. The danger of only chasing paychecks, Rich Dad warned Robert. Most people work for money, not for learning. They look for promotions, raises, and titles. But when the economy shifts or their industry changes, they're lost. That's why you must learn skills, not just earn wages. Robert began to see why so many professionals struggled financially. Even with high incomes, they knew one thing really well, but lacked the financial and business skills that created freedom. Motivational takeaway. The lesson is clear. Don't just work to earn money. Work to learn skills that will serve you for life. Skills are assets. They compound over time. A paycheck ends when your job ends, but skills can create opportunities forever. Ask yourself today, am I working only for money? Or am I working to gain skills that will make me financially free? Rich Dad's words echo across time. The rich aren't paid more because they worked harder. They're paid more because they learned more. Chapter 7. Overcoming Obstacles. The afternoon trade winds moved the palm leaves like green waves above Rich Dad's porch. Robert and Mike sat on the steps. The smell of engine oil and roasted coffee drifting from the businesses down the street. They had learned how assets worked, why corporations mattered, even how the rich invent money. But Rich Dad wasn't smiling today. He tapped the wooden arm of his chair and asked quietly, "Boys, if all this is so simple, why isn't everyone rich?" Robert shrugged. Because they don't know? Rich Dad shook his head. Because they don't overcome the obstacles inside themselves. He held up 5 fingers. Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, arrogance. These defeat more people than recessions ever will. Conquer them, and money will follow you. He folded his hand back into a fist. Let's walk through each, like warriors preparing for battle. 1. Fear of losing money. They walked to the edge of the lot where Rich Dad's trucks were parked. He pointed at the tires, thick with dust. See these? Every business leaves tracks. Some tracks lead to profit, some to lessons. Every investor loses money sometimes. Winners aren't afraid of losing. Losers are. Robert remembered his own first little deal that went south. He'd been embarrassed. Rich Dad continued. People say, what if I lose? I say, what if you learn? Loss is tuition. You can pay a university or you can pay the market, but either way, you'll pay. The question is, do you collect a diploma of wisdom at the end? He gave Robert a simple rule. Protect the downside, never bet Start small, cheap lessons. Learn fast, review every decision. What went right? What went wrong? What to change? Fear doesn't disappear, Rich Dad said. You just outgrow it by practicing with small risks until your courage is bigger than your worry. Narration cue to your audience. Ask yourself, what tiny, affordable risk can I take this month that buys me a real lesson? 2. Cynicism, the loud voices of doubt. They crossed the street to the cafe. At a corner table, the usual experts argued over headlines, interest rates, elections, market crashes. Rich Dad smiled. Meet Chicken Little, he whispered. He's everywhere. The sky is falling, he cries every year. He leaned closer. Cynicism sounds smart, but it builds nothing. The cynic always finds a reason not to act. Prices are too high. It's too late. It's a bubble. Sometimes he's right. Most times he's just safe. So what do we do? Robert asked. Facts, not fear. When you hear doubt, do that. Walk properties, check cash flows, call 3 agents, get comps. If the numbers sing, buy your earplugs and let Chicken Little keep shouting. And if the numbers don't work, walk away, quietly, without drama. Doubt solved by data becomes discipline. Narration cue. Replace what if it goes wrong with what are the numbers? What's my plan B? 3. Laziness, the most dangerous busy in the world. Back at the office, phones rang and errands piled up. Rich Dad watched the bustle with a knowing look. Strange thing, he said. The busiest people are often the most lazy. They use busyness to avoid the actions that matter. Finding deals, studying markets, building assets. He wrote a question on his notepad and slid it to Robert. What's in it for me if I do this today? This, he said, is a little spark of healthy desire. Not greed for toys, but hunger for freedom. When you feel too busy, ask this question. If the answer is nothing, you're not busy, you're hiding. Gave them a weekly ritual. 1 hour hunting, call on 2 leads, analyze 1 deal, make 1 offer, even a tiny one. 1 hour learning, a chapter on accounting, a market report, a call with a mentor. 1 hour building, systemize a task, document a process, set an auto transfer to your asset fund. Tiny, consistent moves, he said. 3 hours a week can change your net worth faster than 30 extra hours at a job. Narration cue. Set a standing calendar block called Build Assets. Guard it like a doctor guards surgery. 4 bad habits. Paying everyone else first. Evening shadows stretched across the floor. Rich Dad opened his ledger. Most people pay the landlord, the bank, the government, the grocery, and never pay themselves. That's why their assets never grow. He tapped the page. Pay yourself first. Transfer to your asset account as soon as money arrives, before the bills. Robert frowned. But what if there isn't enough left for the bills? Then the pressure will force you to think better. Negotiate, sell more, cut waste, create a new stream. That discomfort is your coach. He raised a finger. 2 warnings. 1, don't be reckless, pay your taxes on time. 2, don't paper over problems with consumer debt. Pay yourself first isn't magic. It's a trigger that trains your mind to solve money problems like an owner, not an employee. Narration cue. Automate a transfer, no matter how small, into an asset investment bucket on payday. Let discomfort sharpen you. 5. Arrogance, ego plus ignorance. A delivery man asked Rich Dad a question about permits. Rich Dad listened, admitted he didn't know, and phoned his attorney on the spot. After he hung up, he turned to the boys. Arrogance is expensive. It's when ego says, I already know, and silences the questions that would save you. End. The cure? He continued. Curiosity and counsel. Surround yourself with people who know what you don't. Brokers, accountants, attorneys, operators. Pay for good advice, then check it against the numbers and your own education. He smiled. The more I learn, the richer I get. Not just in money, but in options. Narration cue. Finish this sentence. I don't know enough about one place yet. Now list the 2 people or resources you'll use to close that gap. The training loop. How the rich toughen the mind. Rich Dad stood and dusted off his hands. Now tie it all together. 1. Face a small fear. Take a tiny, calculated risk. 2. Silence cynicism. Gather facts and decide. 3. Beat laziness. Keep a weekly asset ritual. 4. Fix habits. Pay yourself first and let pressure train you. 5. Check arrogance. Seek mentors. Keep learning. Run this loop every month, he said, and your mind becomes stronger than circumstances. Assets follow strong minds. Robert looked out at the street. Same town, same sky, but everything felt different. The real battlefield wasn't the market. It was inside, the place where fear argued with courage, where laziness wrestled discipline, where ego tried to talk over curiosity. Rich Dad clapped him on the shoulder. Son, money is simple. People are complicated. Master yourself, and money becomes your student. Action prompts for your listeners. To close the chapter, fear. Choose 1 micro investment. Experiment this month. Book a property tour, buy a single share, pitch a tiny service. Keep the risk small. Make the lesson big. Cynicism. For any what if, create a 3-item checklist, data you'll gather, and a go, no-go rule. Decide by numbers, not noise. Laziness. Block 3 hours week labeled Build Assets. Hunt, learn, build. Treat it as non-negotiable. Bad habits. Automate a pay-yourself-first transfer, even 500 rupees, $10 to start. Increase it quarterly. Arrogance. Write one question you're afraid to ask, and ask a pro this week. Closing line to narrate. Obstacles don't disappear. You outgrow them. When you do, opportunities stop looking scary and start looking obvious. Chapter 8. Getting started. It was late evening. The sky over Hawaii painted in shades of orange and purple. Robert and Mike sat with Rich Dad on the porch. For weeks, they had listened, taken notes, and wrestled with ideas. Finally, Robert asked the question burning in his heart. Rich Dad, how do we actually start? What's the first step? Rich Dad leaned back, smiled, and said, getting started is the hardest part. Most people never begin, not because they can't, but because they won't. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect deal, the perfect paycheck. But the truth is, there's no perfect time. There's only now. Step 1. Choose a reason greater than reality. Rich Dad told the boys, money alone won't keep you moving. You need a reason, a dream or a cause that pulls you forward when obstacles push you back. For him, it was freedom, the desire to live life on his own terms, to never be chained to a paycheck. He said, when fear shows up, your reason is your anchor. Ask yourself, why do I want to be rich? If your reason is strong enough, excuses lose their power. Step 2. Daily habits of choice. Rich Dad explained that wealth wasn't built in a single deal, but in daily choices. Every day, you choose, spend or save, learn or waste, grow or stay stuck. Small choices compound. He advised Robert, set aside a portion of income for assets before spending anything else. Dedicate time weekly to study money. Read, listen, observe. Surround yourself with people who think bigger. Your habits are the bricks of your financial house, he said. Build wisely. Step 3. Don't wait for school to teach you, Rich Dad warned. School teaches you to memorize facts. Life teaches you with mistakes and opportunities. The rich never stop learning, through books, mentors, markets, even failures. Robert asked, but how do we know what to learn first? Rich Dad replied, learn skills that make you stronger in the game of money. Sales, communication, investing basics. Every skill you add makes you more powerful. Step 4. Choose heroes and models. Rich Dad often pointed to examples. Look at people who inspire you, not for their money, but for how they think. Study them, copy them, adapt their habits. He explained how he once studied business owners he admired. He watched how they managed people, how they spotted deals, how they stayed calm in crisis. Heroes make success look possible, he said. If they can do it, so can you. Step 5. Give before you receive. One of Rich Dad's surprising lessons was generosity. Money flows to those who give value first, he explained. If you want knowledge, teach someone else what you know. If you want opportunities, help others succeed. Life has a way of sending back what you put out. Robert realized Rich Dad lived this himself, always teaching, always mentoring, always sharing his time and wisdom. The final push. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Rich Dad grew quiet. Then he said, the most important step of all is simple. Start. Most people plan, dream, and talk, but they never begin. The first step doesn't have to be perfect. Buy one small asset. Take one small risk. Learn one new skill. Just start moving. Robert felt a chill, not from the breeze, but from the power of the words. He understood that building wealth wasn't about waiting. It was about beginning. So what does this mean for you? Find your reason, your why, that will pull you forward. Build strong daily habits. Pay yourself first, study, grow. Keep learning. Every skill makes you stronger. Look to heroes. Study those ahead of you. Give first. Value flows back. And above all, start now. Rich Dad's voice echoed in Robert's memory. The journey of wealth begins with one small step. Don't wait for the stars to align. Move, and the stars will move with you. Chapter 9. Still want more? Here are some to-dos. The trade winds had quieted. The night was still, and only the soft hum of crickets filled the air. Robert and Mike leaned forward eagerly. They had listened for weeks, absorbing every lesson Rich Dad had shared. Finally, Robert asked the question that was on his heart. Rich Dad, we've learned so much, but if someone really wants to start today, what exactly should they do? Rich Dad's eyes sparkled. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Wealth is not built by knowing, it's built by doing. So if you want more, here are the steps. They're disciplines. And if you practice them, wealth will follow. Step 1, the power of choice. Every day, Rich Dad began, you face a choice. Grow your asset column or grow someone else's. Buy a liability or buy an asset. Listen to fear or listen to courage. These choices, repeated daily, shape your financial destiny." He paused, then said firmly, "Most people don't get rich because they choose comfort over growth. Choose growth, even when it stings. Step 2, look for opportunities everywhere. Train your eyes," Rich Dad said. "Most people see problems. The rich see opportunities hiding inside those problems." He gave an example. When the economy dips, the poor panic. The middle class tighten their belts. The rich, they go shopping for assets on sale. He reminded Robert that money is never gone. It only flows. The key is to stand where the flow is moving. Step 3, pay for knowledge, not just stuff. Invest in your mind, Rich Dad said. Most people buy toys, but the rich buy wisdom. Spend money on courses, books, mentors, experiences that grow your financial intelligence. The more you know, the more opportunities you see. Robert remembered Rich Dad himself, always in conversation with attorneys, accountants, other entrepreneurs. He never stopped learning. Step 4, find mentors and models, Rich Dad continued. Find someone doing what you want to do. Study them, shadow them, learn how they think. One conversation with the right mentor can save you years of mistakes. He cautioned, though, pick mentors who have actually done it, not just talked about it. Don't just listen to teachers, listen to practitioners. Step 5, take small, consistent action. Rich Dad's tone grew serious. Dreaming changes nothing. Talking changes nothing. Only action creates wealth. He leaned forward. Don't wait for the $1 million deal. Start with something small. A single share of stock, a small side business, a rental room, even a book that teaches you one skill. Each step builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. Momentum builds wealth. Step 6, be generous. Finally, Rich Dad surprised them. Give. Always give. Time, knowledge, value, even money. When you help others grow, you create space for wealth to flow back to you. He explained how many of his best opportunities had come from people he had once helped with no expectation of return. Life rewards those who create value for others, he said. That's why selfish greed rarely lasts, but value does. The closing wisdom. The crickets grew louder as the night deepened. Rich Dad looked at Robert and Mike with a steady gaze. Boys, I can't walk the road for you. I can only point to the path. Wealth is built one choice at a time. One risk at a time. One lesson at a time. You. But only you can take the steps. Robert felt a surge of determination. The world hadn't changed, but he had. He no longer saw money as something distant and mysterious. It was a tool, a game, a teacher. Rich Dad's final words rang like a bell. Don't just read about money. Don't just talk about money. Go out and make money your servant, not your master. So if you're listening right now and you want more, here's the truth. Don't wait for permission. Start. Don't wait for perfection. Act. Don't wait for luck. Create opportunities. Begin with your reason. Build your habits. Learn relentlessly. Find mentors and take consistent action. Wealth isn't magic. It's a mindset, a muscle, a practice. Ask yourself, will I keep waiting for the perfect moment, or will I start building my financial freedom today? Because the rich don't wait, they act out. And that was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, narrated and explained here on the Narrated novel. Remember, money alone doesn't create wealth. It's your mindset, your choices, and your actions that shape your future. Don't just let these lessons stay as words. Apply them. Take one step today toward financial freedom. If you enjoyed this journey and want more books transformed into powerful stories and summaries, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Narrated novel. Because here, every book has a story, and every story has the power to change your life. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing,